Yeah.
Just kidding. I remember.
Hello.
And this is
Hey, look at
episode
we're
number
on.
196. Today's topic is about building a WordPress site locally with something called DesktopServer, right? DesktopServer, is that its name? Yep, we're going to talk about DesktopServer today. Let's go around the room real quick, get everyone introduced. Greg, tell us all about yourself.
I'm Gregg Franklin, and I'm a developer, and I work at ServerPress, making desktop server and helping do support.
ServerPress.
How about you, Mark?
Hi, I am Mark Benzacane. I am also a ServerPress, and I handle operations and all kinds of other weird things, and obviously handle not being able to get my lower third work. So just look at Gregg's and put my name in the place, and that's what my lower third would look like.
So you're not good at handling your lower third, is what I heard.
Greg's the one that does
that's
support,
my knees
so
down today. My knees down.
We're fine that Greg's the one that does support over there.
What just happened here?
So far
Hey,
away
Robert.
from all of us.
They only took like
we're
5
doing the intros at this point, guys. All right, Robert, how about you?
My name's Robert Gillmer. I do not work for ServerPress, but I am an adamant fan of it. I've been using it for years now, and I give talks on it. I've submitted some to WordCamps about desktop server.
Thank you, Robert.
How about you, Say?
Oh, me? I am Say Reed. Hi, I make WordPress, teach WordPress, love WordPress, preach WordPress at Say Reed Media on all the things.
Nice. How about you, Steve?
I am Steve Zehngut. I'm the founder of Zeek Interactive, and I run the OC meetup.
I love Steve's expression. He was like, what just happened here?
He did get away from us.
I'm Jason Tucker. You can find me over at Jason Tucker on Twitter, and I blog and do all the stuff over at jasontucker.us. So let's talk a little bit about desktop server and ServerPress in general. So what are your guys' offerings? Like, what are you guys doing nowadays? I know you guys have a few different products going on and stuff like that. What do you guys got going on?
Go for it, Greg.
Right now we have desktop server, which lets you build locally, and we're at version 3.8.2 right now, which we've kind of been stepping, everybody's heard the rumors about 4.0 coming, and what we've been kind of doing is building along. We've been doing steps toward 4.0 because we wanted to make sure that each step works so that when we get 4.0, it all works. One of the things we added was like plugins, developer plugins. Like Steve's favorite is the bypass login.
Yeah.
Yes.
And, then we also brought on another.
Go ahead. I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves because I want to dive a little bit into, for example, what those plugins are. But I think we need to define for our audience what we're talking about when we talk about a local server setup install.
Sure. Well,
Steve, you want to handle that?
Well, according to Wikipedia.
That never gets old.
So a lot of the times, many times in our meetup, we've talked about cowboy coding. We've talked about cowboy coding. So let's start there. Cowboy coding is when you're actually doing code changes or plugin updates or core code updates live environment on your production server, and that's bad.
Yeehaw.
Yeah, that's bad for many reasons.
It's like riding a bucking horse is the reason it is called. You could be thrown off and it could hurt. It's kind of the analogy happening there. It's not like whether you're a good cowboy or not a good cowboy, either way it's still dangerous. A horse can buck.
And it's always not a matter of if you're going to get thrown off, it's a matter of when you're going to get thrown off.
That is true.
And it will always be at the most hurtful time.
Yes, that is true.
You're like right when you're done and you're like, cool, I only have this one other thing to do, and then you hit the button and then the whole site goes down, and that's not like it's ever happened to me, but I'm just saying, hypothetically, that could happen.
So the alternative to cowboy coding is to test your code first before you push it to the live site. And I know, what a concept. So you can either do that on a staging server, or what I prefer to do is build everything locally on my computer here. So my computer runs a copy of a web server, right? So a copy of all my WordPress sites are right here on my local machine. And I'm going to throw it over to Greg.
So Greg, how do people deal with, like, if there's somebody who's very new to WordPress and they're scared to death of, like, how do I install this thing? How do I work with it? How do I build my site? I don't want to show anybody anything until it's actually working. Like, how does that benefit the newbie user, and how are you guys kind of approaching that?
It allows them to, of course, not have a live site go down, and at that point they can do that all locally using a sandbox, what we like to call a sandbox, which is running a web server, as Steve said, and a MySQL server, because WordPress uses both a web and it has a database, so it has files in a database. And Desktop Server does that. It goes ahead and you just install it, and it gives you that entire environment locally, right there, just as if you were running a web host, but you're all local.
So how noob is noob? Because full disclosure here, I haven't used Desktop Server in a couple of versions, and that's just because it doesn't necessarily work the way that I work with a lot of my clients, et cetera, et cetera. But I have found that Desktop Server, because you have to create the MAMP and all that environment, can actually be a little too technical for an actual noob. So is that something you guys have changed, where it's just literally like a one-click, like a normal application, or do you still have to set up the MAMP and all that? I just like saying that word.
I have a story to share.
Please do. Go.
Okay,
So,
that's what we're here for.
Yeah, hey. So 2 years ago, yeah, thank you. 2 years ago, before WordCamp Milwaukee, I decided that it was the first WordCamp I was going to take my kids to. My son was 8 years old, so maybe it was 3 years ago. He wanted to do demos of Desktop Server. He had never even touched Desktop Server, didn't even know what WordPress was. I installed Desktop Server on his system, and I did not give him a single instruction. And within 10 minutes, he had a WordPress site up and running on his system. And then he immediately dropped what he was doing and said, "I'm creating a website right now," and ran off to do it. So
wait. So
an
not only are you basically
an 8-year-old child who had basically no clue what I did for a living was able to get WordPress up and running on his.
Well, first of all, one, that's your kid, so I'm going to go ahead and say he's got a little bit of that. Maybe the technical brain happening there. But also, you installed Desktop Server for him, so that's the part I'm talking about. Is that something you still have to set up the local environment properly, or it's just completely run it?
It's just like an install, like anything else on your programs. You'll just download the program and click on install, and it does the installation. So very much like you hear the programs.
So you really should have trumpeted that from like some sort of parade at some point. Hey, you don't have to MAMP anymore because.
Well, let's go. I think we've skipped a piece here for our audience to understand. Right, there is an alternative to Desktop Server, and that is these other tools: MAMP, XAMPP, WAMP, anything that ends with AMP. Right, right, and so you can run a local install of a web server, right, using some of the open source tools that are out there, right?
Yes. I don't know why that's so funny.
Well, what I'm describing, what Say describes, that actually requires some technical know-how. That requires some experience.
Yeah,
right?
You get on your terminal and shizzlers.
There's a lot that you need to do to make that actually run. And so that is very difficult. What Desktop Server is, it automates that whole process for you, and on top of that, it's specific to WordPress, right? So it's really about administering WordPress sites. MAMP, XAMPP, WAMP, any AMP, right? I'm gonna say it a few times so that Say keeps laughing. Those are just running any.
I just think they're so funny.
Those are for running.
It's really funny to say out loud.
Those are for running any type of website, not just WordPress.
And AMP stands for Apache, MySQL, and PHP, in case you're wondering what that is an acronym for.
The three elements that WordPress needs.
So there you go. So
right.
MAMP.
So
it's like always made me do that. I don't even know what it is. You know, there's just some words that like just set you off. That's one of them.
I'm gonna go back to your question about the level of expertise it requires to run Desktop Server, and the answer is 0. Right? It really is. You run Desktop Server, it installs everything, and you're up and running with WordPress.
And I've seen it at WordCamps where Gregg will be doing a talk about how to just do local environment, and he'll say, here's how you download it. You download, you double click, you install, and then all these people that you look in the room, and it's like none of these people are big hardcore, web dev type folks. Yet they're still loading up, WordPress and essentially skipping the 5-minute install just by doing a quick load double click and they're up and running.
Ma'am.
And I just to let you know, you can actually, we've done it. We don't, of course, support it, but you can build other sites in Desktop Server where you just want to we've had some people who are just starting to learn, like you said, a brand new person that may want to learn how to develop just like an HTML and CSS, because that environment already exists, is that you can use something like a blank blueprint. And we've even played with, do I dare say it, Joomla and Drupal.
You don't.
Install those.
Don't dare say it, Greg. Don't dare you dare say that.
So I've used that. I've used those blank installs for Interconnect IT's find and replace. So it searches through an entire MySQL database and replaces whatever you want. So I've got an installation on my thing that just has that program installed. It's nothing to do with WordPress necessarily, but I use it on
I also have
WordPress.
Infinite WP done that same way, Robert.
Yeah. Infinite WP is a good
So let's
So
talk about
back
what-
to the standard use.
Or not.
I'm gonna geek out on that a little harder.
Well, it's geeky, but
Man.
it's awesomely geeky.
Anyway, the point is, so now you can just one-click install it like any app, and it works right out of the box. You got your local install. You connect it to your production site, and then you can. This is the other question I have. I'm so glad we're catching up on this right now. So now you can you do the live push, or is that where some of these new plugins are coming in?
You can do a live push when you're done building the site. You can go ahead and use a couple different ways to deploy up to the site. One is called Quick Deploy. It's one of the easiest, and then there's also Direct Deploy. Both of them are actually really easy to do. And if you even have any issues or troubles, that's where you can reach out to me and in support, and I'm happy to help if you have problems getting that site up to the host.
So you can do a quick push or a direct push, but you can't do quick and direct. Is that what you're saying?
Just two different ways, but yes.
What's the difference between quick and direct?
One method deploys what we call packets of the site up to the server, and it builds it up into a package, an archive up there, and extracts it and replaces the site that's in place. The other one, you FTP up the archive and then run a little script, and it does it. So just two different ways of transporting.
And all the URLs are scrubbed and everything, so it will automatically create the new URL that you're posting to versus your local development, which is going to have a different URL.
So give an example with Mark. Just let's say you built a site locally named sayread.dev, and you wanted to now deploy it up to sayreadmedia.com. It will go through every file and every database table and change it for you.
Oh,
Can't do that.
that's the sound. Yeah, that's the sound that happens when you do that. It goes, oh, and like little twinkly things happen.
Yes.
So you guys
All the
also
twinkly
ended up
things.
coming out with another product that kind of complements this, and it's not something that's required to use or anything like that, but being able to kind of sync between two different sites, right?
Yes. Thanks for bringing that up, Jason. There is a new plugin that it's called WP Site Sync. Right now, we were just talking about when you deploy a site, Desktop Server deploys the entire site, which is all the files and the database. It will deploy also the database on its own. But if you wanted to deploy more specifically, for example, just a single post or a single page, you can use WP Site Sync to do this. You install WP Site Sync on the source and on the target. That doesn't have to be just local. It could be a staging server. It doesn't matter. You write your post and hit sync, and it sends it right up there, including all the metadata, all the pictures, the photos. Everything gets sent up to the target server and gets deployed. It's really cool, especially if you have content writers or other people who are writing content and you don't necessarily want them in the dashboard.
It's pretty cool.
I just want to clarify that sync and psych are different words. So it's not WP Site.
They are very different words, yes.
Because if you uploaded it and it was like psych, didn't actually upload it, that would be different. But
Yes, thank you for pointing that out, Say. That was.
Just wanted to clarify in case anyone was confused.
Is there any way our audience can have that last 10 seconds of their life back?
No, I took it and I
Well, it's been 30 seconds now, so there we go.
leave it to Steve to extend the moment.
So one of the things that I love about Desktop Server, getting us back on topic, one of the things I love about it, and the reason I will choose it over all the other alternatives, all the amps and all the vagrants and all the others.
Mamp.
There you go. I was trying to avoid it, but there you go. Is the DS plugins. The DS plugins, well, I'll let Gregg explain it because he works in it.
Mark, I'm going to let you display DSCLI because Robert mentioned about the scrubbing aspect, and you are a pro with this. So.
Yeah. I actually am kind of one of those guys that less is better, which means I'm not really a big graphics interface kind of guy. So when CLI started really making a footprint within the WordPress community, I was kind of excited. I'd always been like, hey, if I have to take my hands off the keyboard, I'm going to be in a bad mood kind of guy. So one of the things Robert brings up, DS plugins, which is within Desktop Server, you can actually add plugins like debugging and
Bypass login,
which is
airplane
awesome
mode. Airplane mode.
Airplane mode. I mean, all these are functions that will.
Sorry.
They're
we
all
love our DS
plugins
plugins.
that you can add to Desktop Server that work on all of your local development sites. So you don't have to add these plugins to every single development site. And when you go to deploy, they don't go with it. They don't ship to the live host. So things like airplane mode, which will shut off all calls to the internet while you're working, which can slow down your development. Bypass login. You don't need to know the password to log into your local site. It'll just bypass it and go right into the dashboard, which is really, really nice, especially when WordPress likes to create these really super high security plugins. DSCLI has become obviously a very fast favorite with mine because it adds CLI functionality to every single one of your local desktop server sites. And you can go in and run any CLI command that you might know or want to know. I use it a lot of time for doing customized scrubbing of my database or files pretty regularly because I find that it's a little bit faster for me to not once again take my hands off the keyboard. So if you go out onto the internet and you do a search for WPCLI, DSCLI will run any of those functions plus some other functionality that we've added to it to make way for Desktop Server 4.0, which is actually going to be running a lot of DSCLI scripts in the background in order for it to be fully functional. So it's a highly efficient way of doing things, and yet you don't really have to know anything in order to do it. So it's just another way to make things simple. And it is awesome. I agree.
And now...
Oh, wait, you guys kind of brushed over some of the... You were talking a little bit about them, but you also just kind of coughed by a couple of the plugins. Can we explore some of those plugins?
Sure. Let's talk about the one I wrote, which I'll just brag about mine, is the admin color bar. And what it does is when you're in the dashboard of a local site, up at the very top of WordPress, there is a gray admin color bar. And it has some cool little links to let you do different things in the admin bar. But the problem is if you happen to have a live site open with that same tab open, they can look identical. And the reason I wrote this is one day I accidentally made a change to a live site. So I immediately came out with a plugin that changes.
Quickly created a different plugin for it.
Yes. So I wrote a plugin that changes the top of that color bar to any. You can actually go in and change it to any color you want. Default is blue. And it says local development site up at the top so that you know. And that's one of the plugins. Mark, did you want to talk about the mailbox viewer one?
Oh, the mailbox viewer is also pretty cool. As we all know, when you create a WordPress site, it likes to send out an email, and there are several plugins that like to send out emails, and people might want to contact you through a contact form on email. And when you're working locally, you don't really have an internal mail server that's going to go out and send out the email to you, so you can't really test a lot of mail functionality. Or ISPs just block port 25 so that you cannot use SMTP to send out email.
Freaking port 25.
I know, freaking port 25, right, exactly.
Whatever.
That's your SMTP port, which is, anyway, Simple Mail Transport Protocol. I'm really into educating people on what acronyms mean. So,
It's too much. I can't handle it.
All right. So what this does is it allows you to see any email that your WordPress, your locally developed WordPress site would send. It allows you to see it on a web page within the list of desktop server sites that you have. You just go to the mailbox viewer and it'll list it all out. So you can test the functionality of your contact forms plugin or whatever you might have that needs to make a mail call.
That's awesome because you can really do a full, like for when you're reviewing with clients, you could do a full review of the entire site and its functionality without having to be like, oh, it works, I promise.
Right.
Which is, always an option, but not necessarily like, what you're looking for when you're doing a demo.
Or if you have so many emails that are being sent out, being able to look at those without having to stick your email. That works out really well, too, because it makes it a lot easier to look at that stuff.
Did you say something, Jason? Because all I heard was
I will say MAMP many, many more times in the next 9 minutes.
This is terrible. It's like a trigger word. It's literally like a trigger word.
So now the other big thing about DS plugin, the things that, again, makes me never want to leave Desktop Server, you can put any plugin. It's not just limited to the plugins that ServerPress has written. You can put any plugin. I've got a plugin from Tanya Mork. I've got a plugin, What the File. I've got all these plugins in my DS plugins folder so that they run on all of my local installs.
Oh, you mean any WordPress plugin? I thought you meant any plugin, like I was going to throw a Photoshop plugin in there.
Oh, yeah, any WordPress plugin. Okay. Not just limited to the ones that ServerPress has written.
Within the universe that we have defined as our purview.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Steve's favorite plugin is Bypass Login, if you want to talk about that, Steve.
I love Bypass Login, and the reason I love it is because
Can I guess what it does? I just want to guess. Can I? Sorry,
Sure.
Go ahead. Nope, it's fine.
No, go right ahead.
Just kidding.
So I take as part of my working process, I take a snapshot of my production database and copy it down to my local server so I can see the contents there. And I can never remember what password I've set, either for my password or I might want to test like a subscriber password or an editor password. Bypass Login, what it does is on your WordPress login, it just gives you a little pull-down menu of who you want to log in as, and boom, it's done. You don't have to know the password of the login. So I use it to log in as many different types of users as part of my testing process. It's really great.
That is really great. Then you can. I was gonna say something derailed. That's very handy also for client demos and getting all that stuff approved, because again, trying to get the client to use their imagination is never a good approach, because they don't have the imagination to be able to imagine what's possible. So when you're like, it'll work like this, clients really need to be able to see stuff. So even beyond just Steve being, entertained by being able to log in as everybody, that's a very valuable demo tool.
It's great, especially in a testing environment.
What else?
What else? What about blueprints?
Yeah, let's talk. We skipped over that really quick, so talk about blueprints, Greg. I think that's
blueprints are awesome also.
Blueprints are cool. You can create your own installation the way you like it. So you can go ahead and create WordPress, and with the plugins that are your favorites, the themes that you use all the time, and then save it into the blueprint folder so that when you start up a new project, you can grab that blueprint and say, this is the one I want, and it spins it up. And you can make as many blueprints as you want. So some people will make maybe a blueprint that's specific to e-commerce, so it might have WooCommerce in it and some of their extensions, or they'll make a social media one, or if they're even more specific, if they're like a Genesis builder, they might want to have a blueprint specific to Genesis, so it'll have the Genesis theme and its child themes and some of its plugins. So that's what Blueprints does for you.
Awesome.
I gotta go. I have installs to do. I have to go now. Sorry, I'm just getting excited, and not because Steve keeps saying MAMP over and over.
MAMP.
I think MAMP is like the rotary phone of local hosts, where Desktop Server is, what's the more modern rotary phone? Never
The
mind.
more modern rotary phone.
I was trying to come up with an analogy. It didn't work.
Well,
Cell
first
phone
of
tracks?
all, it's completely digital as opposed to analog. So,
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So it's
I just actually wanted to get into the MAMP in there. Oh, no one's.
Really?
it's like a desktop server is like having a contacts. You know, like current phones, you have contacts. You just push a button. So it's like single button dialing as opposed to rotary phone where you have to like.
Thank you
follow
for
your
finishing
finger
my
back.
analogy.
You're welcome, Steve.
I appreciate that.
Mark is here for you. I just want you to know that.
You know,
He's got your back.
Since we only have a couple more minutes, there's something I gotta say, and I say this at every meetup. What really differentiates a software company is customer service, and ServerPress and desktop. ServerPress is probably one of the #1 companies as far as customer service goes within our industry. I mean, anything I've ever asked them, I've gotten an answer immediately. Now, I don't want to set any false expectations, Greg.
Yeah, because you kind of know them.
Yeah, I don't want you to. I don't want our audience
Greg's like,
to
I
think
hate
that
you,
an
Steve.
answer immediately. But I've never had to wait for anything from Desktop Server, and I not only got my answer got my issue resolved, but anything that I've asked sort of outside of that issue has also been resolved. So these guys are not only here to help support Desktop Server, but they really do help support WordPress in the community, and they do it over and over again. They're really great at it.
And the big sponsors of WordCamps.
Yes.
They are, and Jason and I just did an interview with Greg and Mark on our new little mini-series called Hallway Track, which you can find on WPwatercooler.com, where we do an interview with them. That's like a double, never mind.
Double
they shoot. MAMP. They are great, and they talk about how and why they support the community and some of the work that they do, etc. So definitely go check that out if you get a chance. On WPwatercooler.com. Yes.
Somebody just tweeted that I want to mention one of the other really cool things to do with a local environment, whether it's Desktop Server or MAMP or any of the other ones, is the fact that you can do some testing locally with the brand new versions that are coming. We have a new version that's currently in beta of the WordPress 4.6 that you get a chance to play with first before taking it live. And so you can get familiar with the changes that are coming and find out if your plugins that you currently have on your live site are going to work with this new version. So there's no surprises.
That's awesome.
It really is a beautiful thing. I am really glad you guys have streamlined it to the point where this is something that the beginning user could use, because we need that. We need them to be safe, and the idea of in the sandbox that you can play around, you can mess with stuff, you can be safe in that environment, and it takes a lot of the fear away, so the learning, so that they can learn better, as opposed to being really hesitant to explore parts of the dashboard or try things out with their content and their customization.
What's going on over there?
Someone said map.
So I had an issue. I had an issue a few months ago, and the support team, I had 2 people on the phone with me for like an hour and a half apiece. So that's 3 man-hours, well after hours, that they were dedicating to helping me get back on track. So I can attest to that customer service.
And I just want to say that the whole idea is to make the entry into Desktop Server very simple, but we also wanted to make a piece of software that's robust enough that you can grow into it as your experience as a developer or designer grows.
That's awesome.
Very true.
Well, you guys are definitely doing it.
Thanks.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, but it's totally worth it.
Thanks for holding down the MAMP.
And Dave Jeff being a part of
Thanks for taking the MAMP out of my life. I really appreciate it.
MAMP.
MAMP. This is the quality of our latest episode.
Folks, thank you all for being on the show today. I really appreciate it. Go over to our website at WPwatercooler.com, click on the link
/MAMP.
subscribe. If you like this particular episode, click on the little thumbs up button. We'd really appreciate it. Folks, have a good rest of your day.
Tweet us if you don't.